Peace family, Vie Darling, the cosmic queen and your intergalactic interpreter. And I am just gonna rattle off some messages as they come to me. I was pretty sick the past couple of weeks, and in particular, I have been feeling quite nauseous and having headaches and just a lot of fatigue. But this is stuff that many others have been reporting to me. And in one of my most recent the mysteries, I shared that, you can tell if it's something that is supernatural versus something that is just like being sick. You can tell because it feels different. There's a difference in the density. There's a difference in the sense that you get around it. Like, it's like, this is different. And if you can't tell, then you need to spend more time meditating and you need to become more aware of your body. And that's really just for everybody, not just, those of us who are supernatural, as I call us, outliers, not just us. It is for everybody. If you cannot tell what is going on in your body, you need to spend more time with your body. And I don't mean, just driving it around, but developing an actual relationship with it. I've just seen such a beautiful leaf. I have to pick it up and take it with me. So that also goes for me, but some of this stuff particularly, I think also the Fae told me. And so the energy, the realm of the Fae, the spiritual realm, is called the fairy, and that's the energy that will be active when it is not just like a regular occurrence. And you want to sense into that. And I know I'm just channeling that. I just downloaded that. It's not necessarily what I would have said before, but I'm sharing what has been channeled to me or whatever. I've had so much purging going on the past few days. It's been absolutely horrible. It's been really hard to just be present in my life and want to be present in my life, want to be an active participant and not just like give up and shut down. And if you have also had that experience, please feel free to, leave a comment about that in the comment section. But yeah, that's been really quite tough for me personally, this experience of just purging all of this stuff that I don't even know what it is, but it always comes along with memories. So there are memories that have been repressed, and in my experience, if you are an SRA survivor, you may relate to this, but there are quote unquote guardians at each gate, and that is a replica, that is a bastardization of what really happens in the universe and the cosmos. But in this case, they have programmed fear like a phobia, like an extreme fear of something, and placed that thing in your psyche at anywhere that they don't want you to go. And that's, excuse me,
Sorry.
that's gonna look like memories that they don't want you to access, and anything that they have blocked off is something that most likely is going to contribute greatly to your own progress and empowerment, because remember that they want to block off as much of your power as possible in order to siphon it. And they don't want you to not generate power, because then they can't use you anymore, and they need to be able to use you because they are not capable of creating for themselves. And I think that says a lot about like why generative AI is the way that it is, because generative AI cannot create anything that is like really moving, because it lacks the human spirit. You know what I mean? I think that people like who are not actually creative, or people who doubt their creative abilities, are afraid of like the effects of like generative AI. And to me, it's just like, I'm absolutely not afraid of AI, because at the end of the day, AI is not capable of replacing me. It can't do the things that I do. It cannot make the same connections that I can make, because it's a computer program. That's just like not really possible. So I really encourage people to just like stop being so concerned about it. And another thing that I see people doing is just getting really upset about it and like being like, don't use it. Oh, we're not going to use it anymore. And it's like, that's actually not a solution. Did you know that that's not a solution and it's not helpful? Because you just being like, we're going to just stop right here. And where you stop is hellacious anyway. You're not helping. I mean, it is helpful to not continue causing harm, but that's not an actual solution, and that doesn't reverse any of the harm or damage that has been caused, and it doesn't help to progress humanity at all. And that's what we need to be thinking about. It's not enough to just stop doing the harmful stuff. And I think because people are so used to abuse culture, where most people are fine with never people to continue abusing them, to be honest. But it is definitely a step up for you to demand that people stop abusing you. But for people who have the best interpersonal relationships, I would say, the criteria cannot just be that you stop being abusive. It's that you atone for what harms you've caused. And that's not something that I see people pursuing. That's how the universe operates as well, is that's how balance is struck. That's how equilibrium and equanimity is met by the offensive party atoning for what they've done. And And so this idea of like, oh, I'm just gonna not use AI, and that's like the end of like and I'm gonna talk shit about it, and that's the end of my advocacy, even though it's apparently something that I care a lot about. Like, that's really not actually helpful at all, because at the end of the day, it's actually not going anywhere. AI is going to continue existing and getting bigger, and rather, I guess I'd say, like, existing and expanding and spreading. And it's not going to matter if one person just doesn't use it, because more people are going to use it. And that's just something that people need to like understand. It's really, they are committed to this becoming a thing, and it's going to, and it has, but it's not like written in stone how that happens. So what I've advocated for is for people to, advocate for eco-integrated systems, earth-integrated systems. And what does that mean? What does that look like? Earth-integrated systems for AI look like the data servers and server farms using reclaiming water. And that means like using, like, filtering black water and gray water so that it can be used for cooling the data centers. And that takes away the issue, the environmental issue with the water. This is something that's already being done by major companies like Google. Google's already using this kind of like model, and a lot of the big tech companies are already using this model. The only reason that any company would not be using this by now is because it's a little bit costly. And if there were laws across the country, across the globe, that forced these companies to have to only use reclaimed water, that would resolve so many of the issues. Because, like, yeah, it's costly for you, but, like, right now, the people are underwriting that cost. The planet is underwriting that cost. Mind you, people still are paying for access to generative AI when they have subscriptions to platforms like OpenAI's ChatGPT. So, what I am suggesting here is they need to always be paying out of pocket by having to filter the water. And like I said, that's going to do so much for I guess I might say, like, society and the planet. So I didn't mean to go on that tangent about AI, but I do think that it's going to be relevant and helpful to somebody. And I hope that people can see the value in what I'm saying and apply it to different aspects of their lives, whether it has to do with AI, your career, creativity, or, as I mentioned, like abusive dynamics and interpersonal dynamics of varying types. I also want to say that, I think just getting back to like what I was saying is be mindful, like to not just also take my word for it and like base things off of assumptions, because that's not always necessarily correct either. There's so much that is at work and that is at play when we are considering these things, that you just have to show up for each and every single situation as your full self, and not make your choices based on one thing that somebody said. Your choices should be based on all of your cumulative knowledge coming to fore at the moment which you are being presented with, and making a decision based on your intellect and your intuition. Not really because Vie Darling said that this is the case in every single time, because the enemy, the adversary, is wily and cunning, baffling, and powerful. I say this all the time, that they are very, very sophisticated, and for that reason, they're very, very successful in their endeavors, and they're highly capable of achieving their goals. It would be a huge mistake to underestimate what they're willing to do, and for that reason, what they're capable of. It's not because they're smarter or better in any capacity whatsoever. It is 100% because they are depraved, and they are willing to go to whatever lengths they must in order to achieve their psychotic, inhumane, disgusting, fucked up goals. One thing that occurs to me and feels pretty heavy and pretty important to express and communicate is that their fucked up goals are, people are oftentimes confused about why they do this, why they want to achieve these kinds of goals, and why they do the things that they do, because nobody in their right mind would. And I always say, because they're not in their right mind, they're insane. They're psychopaths. And I think that psychotic behavior has been so normalized and even glorified that people do not seem to genuinely comprehend and understand the gravity of what it means to be a fucking psycho. It's not something that I say lightly. If you think a narcissist is bad, if you think a narcissist is bad, meet a fucking sociopath. And if you think a sociopath is bad, if that's somebody that you never want to fucking meet again, if you don't ever want to engage with, that's what a psychopath is. And one thing that feels really important for me to express right now is that they're not from Earth. That's why Earth is expendable to them. I've referred to them many times before as off-worlders, and that description still stands. They're not from here. So to them, a parasite does not need the host body to continue living, because a parasite is going to find a new host body. How? How the fuck do you think that tapeworms go from person to person? You know what I mean? I don't fucking know all of the science behind parasites, but they will find a host body. And I think that it's also important to understand, this form of consciousness didn't come from Earth. It came to Earth, and it is a form of consciousness. Yeah, some lineages are more susceptible than others, but any and everybody can and has expressed it through themselves at one point or another, because Euro-colonial matrix is built off of it. And that's why when you think about all of these colonial empires that were extreme. I just saw something that was weird. It was like, it looked like the Yeti from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, but it wasn't. It was, it also looked like a banshee. Anyway, it's like, they're, where was I? They're not from here. They came here, this consciousness. And if you think about like every civilization that was able to be taken over by the Europeans, a lot of those civilizations were already in a state of falling because they had reached their tipping point in becoming corrupt anyway. Like, you know, in India and subcontinental Asia, they already had their own like caste system. Colorism was already there. Like, it just was taken even further with the institutionalizing or entrenching of these institutions of Euro-colonialism. In 𝗂𝗽-𝗁𝗁𝗁 writes about this, about like in Central and South America, they're being able to be conquered for the same reason, because there was already a weakening morale because people were tired of being marginalized. You're not really going to fight that hard for something like when you're already being marginalized, you know what I mean? Like, if I don't give a shit because like I don't feel any connection to the greater whole, like, yeah, I'm not gonna fight. I'm gonna just want to protect myself. I'm not gonna try to protect the whole, because like, what the fuck is that gonna do for me? You know what I mean? So that is because of the corruption that was being entrenched over the course of many years, with corrupt politicians and it's just like how we have here now. It's the same kind of principle, and it's really nothing new. So the abuse of power comes as no surprise, and it is cyclical, which is really important to also remember, in my opinion. In any case, yeah, just like think for yourself. Don't let me be a free thinker, and do what's best for you. In these times, everybody's looking for someone to save them. Everybody's looking for someone to tell them what to do and how to be. And it's just like, you have to be willing to think for yourself. You have to be willing to make your own decisions. And I'm guilty of this too, where like, I don't want to make the wrong decision because I don't want to be accountable to like painful consequences. You know what I mean? I don't want to experience pain, so I don't want to like be accountable to any of my decisions, because then pain might come. But of course, I want all of the glory about making a good decision or being right. But when you're pain avoidant, it really ends up being incredibly destructive for your well-being, your progress and your advancement, because you have to be willing to learn. And the best teachers are the painful experiences that we don't want to go through. And the most liberating experiences are on the other side of that terrible, scary thing that we don't want to face. That has been my experience. But yeah, I think, for me, a lot of just not feeling well the past week or so has been my experience. And I would definitely say, there's been Mercury retrograde, spin in the block type energy, but we don't have to pay that shit any mind. I do think that sometimes there's value in engaging with things from the past, because obviously if it's resurfacing, that is a circuit that's not closed. It's not yet been resolved, so there's something that needs your attention. And I do think that there's value in addressing that, obviously, because you have to. But if it's something that keeps continually coming around like that, especially if it's something that's associated with retrograde, it is karmic, and it's just important to recognize and remember that. I think that I'll be very clear. I'll be the one who's willing to put it all on the line to some extent. I think that sometimes, people come around and they're coming from, I would say that this is often guys, and it's often for me, other psychic people. And I've talked about before how psychic people have to have a code of conduct and honor with one another, where it's certain things you just don't do. And I actually don't even think that it's that complicated, because it's the same shit that you wouldn't do if you were not psychic. If you were just together in person, you wouldn't do certain things. I think if someone says no, they're not interested in a certain type of experience, you have to stop. And if you don't, you are choosing to take on the bad karma of transgressing somebody's personal boundaries and not respecting their autonomy and free will and agency for themselves to make their own choices for themselves. Because rest assured that people who commit any form of transgression of others' autonomy and what have you, they do pay the karmic price for that. And I think that, one other thing that's been coming up a lot lately is just this idea of people being that people not, or these systems, these architects and arbiters of the DSE, being very, very well versed in legalese, so they often get away with they think that they're getting away with things in terms of karma, where it's they think that they can cause harm and put the accountability for that harm or for that action, put the karma of that action onto somebody else, particularly their victim, the person that they've victimized. And yeah, there are also times when they'll try to put the weight of that onto other people, maybe as a FU, as a they are seeking out some sort of revenge or whatever. They want to cause harm to someone who may or may not be involved at all, but they're not the one who did something, but they find ways to manipulate other people into taking on the karma. And one thing that I think is really interesting that's coming up for me right now is like, recently I learned about like this great vowel shift that happened in the English language. And I do think that like contributes to it a lot, because English as a language is not good. It's not a good technology. Language ultimately is a technology. So, I think that people oftentimes think about like mechanics technology or like electric technology in terms of like devices. But those are not the only forms of technology. There are so many different forms of technology that once humans began using them, like these different forms of technology, or had access to this power, were able to level themselves up as the human race. And, if you think about like, let's say Hermeticism. Hermeticism is a spiritual technology. If you think about fire, I guess you could say elemental technology, but the harnessing of fire to achieve different goals that make life easier, better, more efficient for humanity, like that would be like another form of technology that people don't really think about. And so the primary form of technology that I am referencing right now that people don't really think about is language. And language is a form of technology, and it has been used in myriad ways to manipulate just like the world around us and people's reality. But also, people can try to manipulate you, but you can also reject. Like, you can refuse to be manipulated, Just because someone's manipulative doesn't mean that it necessarily works. And that's the thing about like taking on autonomy. It's like, if you know that somebody is a narcissist, and I feel like this is probably why a lot of the time people don't want to hear about it, because they think that if they pretend that they don't know that someone is a bad person, then they're absolved of any culpability for the harm that person caused, because they were too much of a coward to hold them accountable. But that's just not true. And if you even get the sense that something is off about someone and you don't do anything about it, like, you are complicit, and you are going to have to be accountable to however it is you contributed to that person being able to continue causing harm however they were causing harm. So, yeah, anyways, in terms of language, the English language as a technology is really shitty and bad. It's not efficient at all. It's very confusing. It's like, even for people who are really good at using it, like, it's really shitty. And that I don't think is on purpose. I definitely think that that's on purpose. I don't think that that's an accident. I think it's on purpose, because I think that they want to disempower people and, set people up to disempower themselves and to get themselves into binds that they didn't initially intend to be in. And so I actually feel like what's coming up for me is like, encouraging us to like be silent, be the observer. You don't have to speak, you don't have to participate, you don't have to contribute your thoughts and opinions on things, because it is actually it is a better strategic choice to kind of stand on the outside and observe rather than being part of it. So if you are somebody who's always been on the outside, this is actually something that's going to play a huge role for you in the times to come. Because if you don't identify with anything, you don't take on the karma of the things that you don't identify with. All right, so I'm back home. I'm going to leave this here, and I think I'm going to continue making these sorts of like channelings and like just channeled messages, because it's just working well for me right now. Okay, bye.